Hello and welcome to the Discover History YouTube channel, and first of all, apologies from all of us at Discover History. When the lockdown eased, we said we would do videos as in when, and just looking through our playlist last night, I realised we haven't done a video for a very long time. So what we've decided to do, and by popular demand by the way, we are going to do a series of videos on the Battle of Powick, or shall we call it by its real name, the skirmish at Powick Bridge, fought famously on the 23rd of September 1642. Now these videos will run on the same way as our videos that we did on the Battle of Worcester. Now we can't really do the approach to Worcester. In other words, we can't say that the Royalist army has left Stirling 300 miles in 3 weeks, then they enter the city of Worcester, blah blah blah. What we're going to do is the short run-up to the battle, or the skirmish at Powick Bridge, and then we'll cover the fight on that day on the 23rd. So it's something for you to constantly tune into. And what we will do is, just like the playlist has, for example, social history, local history, the Battle of Worcester, you will now find one of our playlist categories as the Battle of Powick Bridge, September the 23rd, 1642. So this is going to be a bit of an introduction for you, really. So famously, on the 22nd of August 1642, technically the English civil wars begin. And most people often think that the civil wars was between, for example, Charles, the King of England, Charles I, Charles Stuart, King of England, and Oliver Cromwell. But you must remember that Oliver Cromwell was around at the start of the Civil War, but he was not leading the army. He raised the cavalry force, for example, and that is all. So really, when you look at the early part of this war, August, the summer of 1642, we have really the Royalists under King Charles I, and then we have the Parliamentarians technically under the control of the Earl of Essex. And very simply, these first few months of the war was really spent raising money, raising arms and raising troops, and that's what brings us to the skirmish at Powick Bridge. Now you have to remember, when the war actually started, the Royalists actually had to move out of London. There was a reason for that. That was because Parliament, the House of Parliament, is in London. And the unfortunate thing is, because they moved out with great speed, they had very little money. So when we think of the Royalists, we must not think of them as all gentlemen and all with their pockets in pouches crammed full of money. Actually, the Royalists are the ones with very little money at the start of the Civil War. And Parliament, however, has the Mint down in London. They also have the Tower of London, which is crammed full of the arms and gunpowder of the nation. So the Royalists are very poor. They would have been putting their hands in their pockets, looking at their pouches and only jingling a small amount of change. And the king decided he needed to raise money. Best way of raising money is to go to local people that you knew would be siding with the Royalists and collect donations from them. Not necessarily money, but it could be silver plate. In other words, candlesticks, plates, bowls, goblets, that sort of thing. And these could be melted down into silver bars, and then the silver bars could be turned into money. And if need be, they could then collect arms and ammunition, and even have the ability to pay soldiers using this cash, and maybe even, as the king contemplated, bringing in money and arms from abroad as well. So in 1642, that summer of 1642, it was very much a time of raising men, raising arms, and trying to work out where the enemy are. Now, we're in the area of Worcestershire, which would have seen troops in these early months of the war. And these wouldn't have been pikemen and musketeers or large trains of artillery. All you would have seen in these first few months since the raising of the standard would have been troops of cavalry, very small units of cavalry, to be fair. In other words, patrols. And throughout history, we've always used cavalry for patrolling. If you think about the Great War, 1914 to 1918, if you think about the Egyptian campaign, for example, or the campaign across Mesopotamia, Britain made use, or the Commonwealth, the Empire made use of cavalry units because they were mobile. They could be travelling great distances, they could be skirmishing, they can be scouting, and that's the same reason back in the 1640s. So what would have happened is units of cavalry would have come across Britain and they would have been looking for the enemy. Where are they raising troops? Which cities and towns have raised men for one side or another? And famously, the royalists were raising this money, and Byron, a man called Byron, was given the important job of raising money for the troops. And the baggage train, and it would have got bigger and bigger, would have been travelling across the country with their aim of meeting Charles at Shrewsbury, which is where Charles moved most of his men, or it became a mustering point for the royalist cause in that summer and the autumn of 1642. So across the entire area you would have seen cavalry forces, and famously Byron snaked through the country and eventually headed into Worcester. Now you have to remember at this point, Worcester is not the faithful city. It never has been. You will see that if you look through the videos back on the Battle of Worcester. And famously, the Byron's wagon train, this convoy of money, entered Worcester and occupied the city for a few days basically. So there was a lot of movement within Worcestershire, and famously you would have had Parliament scouting cavalry coming in here, coming down lanes like this, lurking in the hedgerows, wandering down by riversides, taking the high ground and looking across the cities and towns. And the royalists would have been doing exactly the same thing. Now as we approach September, the start of September 1642, you have to remember Byron is entered Worcester, and both the royalists and the parliamentarians are manoeuvring in this entire area. It's only a matter of days before the two come together. But when will that be? Will it be the 20th of September? Will it be the 21st? Will it be the 22nd, 23rd, 24th? Or maybe it won't happen till 1643. We don't know. So hopefully this has given you a little bit of an introduction to what becomes the skirmish at Poet Bridge, and hopefully you will see how Worcester is not quite the faithful city. It never really has been, and I will always emphasize that to people. So this is video number 1 in our series on the skirmish at Poet Bridge. Stay tuned, there will be more to come, and hopefully you will see how much of an accident this fight actually is. Anyway, on that note, see you soon. Bye bye.